Welcome to the Going Green podcast. Today we're going to ask the question, is this the right time to buy green?
Mm-hmm.
We've had the Chancellor in the UK announce that there's going to be, from very soon, no VAT charged on energy-saving materials and projects.
Yeah, it's actually on installation of energy resources. So this is a huge list, and you can go down detail. But essentially, it's for if you having insulation, the installation of your insulation, that's got to have zero VAT. Installation of new solar panels, installation of new heat pumps and wind turbines, and micro combined heat and power units, or anything you're going to be, I say, installing new. Essentially, you get now this lower rate of VAT, or more precisely, zero rate, a flat rate. Yeah. Lost you again. Yeah.
I've lost my microphone, yes. I found it.
Being a bit funny and dodgy, I'll continue to waffle on.
Okay.
So, anyway, related to all this, in relation to the zero power or the zero rate of VAT, is what the government are hoping to allow more, I say investment, that's the wrong way to put it, but more attitude and more build up of these solar or these renewable sources of heat and power, because of course we're transferring from to a zero carbon based economy.
And we're trying to get rid of gas at the moment as well, with all the problems in Russia and Ukraine. So now does seem to be a really good time if you want to try and get rid of your gas, basically your gas bill. Now would be a good time to try and invest in all these renewables, putting solar panels in, or air source heat pumps, or various other technology to try to sort of mitigate this enormous rise that we're seeing in gas prices. And there will also be because electricity is generated from gas, or in this country up to about 50%, isn't it?
I think it's lower, but yes, it's an amount.
And so the electricity prices are also going to go up. So the government are investing heavily in renewables, but there are a few problems still with renewables that, if you're going to use solar renewables, they don't work well at night. So you've got to find a battery storage system or equivalent. If you want to use wind turbines, they're going to be great. But on days when it's not windy, you've got to do something. Now, it's not quite so bad for the UK trying to generate all this electricity. We've got lots of offshore wind turbines, and it's nearly always windy at sea. And if you go right around the country and you have a whole load of those, the north, the south, the east, and the west, then I would imagine it's going to be windy somewhere any other time.
Yeah.
Very rarely you're going to find the whole of the UK is going to be becalmed in darkness.
Yes, it's one of those things. But in going back to this, the rate of VAT, it only accounts for new installations. So if you want to add on to an existing setup, that's you can't. You can't. VAT will still be applied for that. So let's say you've already got solar panels, you can't extend those solar panels, but you could say, right, I could go for a new heat pump, and that's considered a new installation. Just wanted to throw that back out there.
We want to try and look at some of the technologies that you could put in here. So solar panels is one of those things that's obvious and that people sort of talk about. But if you haven't got a south-facing sort of aspect, then solar panels aren't necessarily the most economical system. And we do face south here. We do have quite a few solar panels, and we do find that it makes about half of our electricity during the day on a
Yes.
nice day.
On a nice day, yes.
Now, today isn't a nice day,
No, it's not.
considering it's the end of March as we're doing the recording, and we should be in nice sort of t-shirts walking outside thinking this is lovely. And you were thinking about more like snow today, weren't you, walking outside?
Yeah, well, it was told we're going to have wintry showers or something after. Frozen mix. Frozen mix was the weather terminology for it.
Can't make up its mind whether it's going to throw snow at you, sleet, hail, or just sort of
whatever.
freezing rain. So that's going to upset the things. But let's have a look at the different technologies that we could put on our house to try to sort of get around this sort of energy crisis and not pay VAT. So one of the best ones that we've ever done here is solar thermal.
Yes, so in reference to that, that's not the solar voltaic. So that's not generating electricity from the sunlight. That's using a basically glorified sunlight to cook water or heat up water, which then feeds into the boiler and the hot water system, and that's why during hot sunny days, we're actually generating the enough hot water for the whole house. And even worse, at the rate that we cannot sort of, everybody sort of goes in for a shower at midday because, of course, we're trying to empty the tank or the hot water tank so that we can regain all this nice, fresh hot water for free.
Yeah, in the summer, it's great. We can generate, I suppose, really from about now, isn't it? This sort of from the equinox to the equinox, we can generate enough heat on most days to supply all our hot water.
Yeah.
However, in the winter, it doesn't. And it doesn't do enough, really, in the winter. We will heat the water that comes in at sort of, well, virtually ice cold. And it can probably heat it up to 20 Celsius on a really cold, grey winter's day.
Yeah. But but you're not expecting super hot temperatures. It's because it's only heating from what the sun's outputting because it's low in the sky. It's not outputting that much energy. It's all those combinational factors. But if you're going from 0 to 20, then your boiler has to only heat up from 20 to wherever you
60 usually, right? 60, 65, yeah.
As opposed to having the energy to heat it up from 0 to 60. So essentially, you've cut your energy consumption of that way by a third, which is any reduction in, I say, energy use, but is more sort of energy cost is a welcome reduction. All these things.
But the big problem is that it's winter and I want to try and heat my house, and the solar hot water basically isn't quite good enough to do that. Now, one of the problems is that we've got a relatively small panel. Now, this small panel is enough to heat our hot water in the summer and spring and autumn, but not in winter. We need more because we're actually going to use more heat. So there are some alternatives to trying to do this, and that is to have bigger panels, more panels. But then if I'm doing that, I'm plastering my roof with those, and I'm not plastering my roof with solar voltaic. But we found a way around that problem.
Yeah. The answer truly is not, it's not what you think, it is not what you actually get. So a little French company, I say a little, called Dual Sun, they've created a new type of panel, and it's very exclusive. It's very expensive, and can't say that, because what it is a solar voltaic panel on top, and then essentially a I say heat exchanger, but essentially glorified coolant pipes underneath that solar voltaic panel, which then can connect to, like say, a system, but they can sort of connect them all together, almost like a heat exchanger in what you would call, one of these computers, like a radiator. And then you can plumb this water like a solar hot water system into your boiler. Okay, that seems fair enough. So basically, you're you're taking the heat, because one of the critical problems of solar panels we've got at the minute is that when the sun shines on them, right, they're converting up to 15 to 30% of that sun's energy into electricity. All that other electricity is then wasted, or more precisely, gets transferred into heat. And a hot panel, solar panel, doesn't really work or convert sunlight into electricity efficiently. So the answer was, could you cool the panel down to essentially, I wouldn't say bring up the efficiency, but basically say the solar panel's cooler, therefore it can actually run longer, like say it can actually run during the midday sun.
More efficiently, yes, basically.
Yes, right? But then they say, well, where are we going to put this extra water? Now, of course, there are the hot water systems, so it's just simply just plumbing these panels in to that system. So, nothing, no new technology, just merely sort of let's combine the two together.
So that makes more efficient solar panels. So you're getting some electricity, but you're also getting, where your panels are, also you're getting water in that same space. So you're heating up your hot water tank.
Yes. So
sounds a much better idea.
Yeah. So for efficiency's sake, instead of now having either hot water panels or solar photovoltaic panels, you now got both. So now essentially you've got your full roof. Instead of doing two sets, you've now got one roof, which means you can have more panels, you can have more solar photovoltaics, and you can have the solar hot water to do power everything. So it's one of those things where it's actually sort of the efficiency on the roof for the amount of panels you can get is actually much higher. And of course, they generate more power because they've got the efficiency of the reduction of or heat loss or heat exchange or generated heat.
So that sounds pretty good. I think, and that would be zero rated again, trying to put all that system in. And if I decided to tear all my panels off and put a new installation in, then I could gain there. I've already got my panels and I've already got my solar thermal, which we've now had for 10 years, 12 years.
I think it's 12, yeah.
And sort of that time we've actually generated and saved quite a lot of energy. And I have to say the solar thermal seems to be more efficient than the solar voltaic, in that, sort of during the summer, our gas bill drops virtually to zero. But I need to try and do something about that bill in the winter. So what other options are available to me? And one of those is obviously wind power, because that's one of those other nice things that you can do. However, I don't really want to put an enormous great windmill either in my back garden or on my roof. And one of the big problems of putting this on my roof is, of course, there are regulations that say how far it's got to be away from the street, because if it falls off the roof, you don't really want to kill people. It's not popular.
No.
So are there any other ways of trying to do this? And I've been looking at some vertical wind turbines that are really quite small, and there's another company that makes these little wind turbines that aren't very big. They're about, I suppose, 30 centimeters or so high.
Right.
And you have lots of them, and you put them in your back garden on what looks like an artificial tree. and these look like little sort of your leaves on the tree, and you can put lots of these on the tree, and they all spin, and they can generate electricity.
Yeah, it's one of those things where looking at novel ways of doing these, but you've got to have them conform to things. I think the reason the tree was allowed daftly was because the blades were actually very small.
Yep, and they're quite sort of a lot safer. So rather than have a really large generator on my roof, another option could be to go for lots of little smaller ones.
Yeah, it's one of the things where you've got to look at the energy. If you're, energy conversion, if you're managing to extract little tiny ounces of energy over instead of something massive, but you also got to look at the massive turbines. They work at, I wouldn't say high speed. That's the wrong way to put it. There's going to be a lot of wind to propel these blades to make them spin to drive that electricity. Whereas little diddy smaller blades, you don't need as much wind, so you can actually extract out from the days where there's not so much wind, and when there's loads of wind, of course, they're going to be spinning like mad, so they're generating no problem.
Big problem is on a really windy day, these little things can actually go so fast that they can actually damage themselves, which is why you notice that perhaps on really windy days, a lot of these wind farms, they actually have to turn off the blades when it gets above whatever speed these machines sort of basically can't cope with. And there are some quite good footage on YouTube if you want to watch some of these when they get too much wind and they sort of collapse and they break. So we could put some of these sort of little well, they're usually vertical wind turbines, these.
Somewhat, yeah.
Vertical wind turbines aren't really quite as efficient as the sort of the standard horizontal sort of fan type. However, they seem to be a lot less dangerous, and you can have them a lot smaller, and so you can put them in various places where you might not be able to put the big ones.
No.
But then if I want to try and buy some of those, then there aren't so many manufacturers doing that at the moment, but we might see some more coming along because of this sort of VAT free sort of situation.
Well, yes, depends how long it lasts. We know from previous set of governments, they try to do all these gas boilers, but no more new gas boilers in homes past 2025. So there's a huge wave of eventual sort of, we get a point where lots of things will change, and so regulations will slowly be changing, and with those sorts of things.
So what could you put in instead of basically a gas boiler? The choices come down to ground source, and that means digging down a long way, and that's expensive. Cheaper than that would be air source. But I found that most air source don't really do enough heat. They're really good as a background heater, perhaps heating your house up to 10 or 15 Celsius. But I don't really want my house at sort of 10, 15 Celsius. I'd like it possibly a little bit warmer than that in the winter. And so if I used an air source, then I've got to put in extra sort of heating to try and help. And electric heating is going to cost me a lot of money. Now, the reason that these air source heaters aren't going to help me too much is I don't live in a modern house. And a lot of UK houses aren't that modern. They've been around for a good number of years, and they're not insulated as well as our European cousins. And I suppose the reason is we have a more mild climate here, really.
Yes.
We don't get much extremes, like we don't get snow showers in March, do we?
Well, hopefully not.
Hopefully not, yes. So we haven't got the insulation. So we've seen projects being done in the UK where someone said they've got a super efficient house, really well insulated, and they barely have to put the heating on at all. And for a house like that, air source would be brilliant. But for my house, it's not going to be.
No, and this is the crux of the whole situation we've got. We've been building houses and that have been heated or has been looked at being heated by gas or even by electricity modern latestly. But at the same time, because we're now trying to go for this zero gas or zero carbon economy, we're going to look at ways of heating the homes differently. But more importantly, the next homes of the future, say, have to be better insulated. They're going to be better built. They're going to be able to actually have all these, I say low efficiency or high efficiency heat transfers, because of course they're not having as much heat output. Now, I want to ask you a question about what is the best way of living, as in the best home for heat source.
Ooh, that's quite a hard one to try and think of what's the best one. So obviously I want a house that is going to be super insulated.
Yes, you do.
Now, I did go to the Buildings Research Establishment, and there they've got a really super house. And as you go into there, you can sort of spot the house because it's, well, the best way of me describing it's a hobbit house.
Yes, it's fair enough. But along with these things, you actually look at what's the best material for insulation, and daftly, that's glorified dirt.
Yeah, and that's what this house is at BRE. They built it right into, rather than having just sort of building the house on top of, they built it into the hill.
Yeah.
And it's got, like quite a lot of buildings I know, a turf roof. And if they can shove sort of a couple of sort of feet or getting on for a meter, I suppose, of soil on top of that, that acts as really quite a good insulation. I know when I helped redesign the local college where I was working, one of the things that we did there, they put a grass roof on. And it sounds rather daft to sort of build a building and put grass on the roof. But it actually then, with all its soil, does have a fantastic insulation sort of feature. And that's good.
Mm.
It also makes lots of nice sort of oxygen and does a bit of carbon capture. And I always wanted to see the principal going along on the roof with the mower, trying to cut it and keep it nice.
Yes. Anyway, but the one of the critical things is people say, well, I can't imagine. Yes, I know the hobbit holes and sort of those things, but what does that look like in real life? And you could go to BRE, except it's a research house, so it's not really active for the public.
But no, it is. You can book to go round there, and they do show you a whole series of really brilliantly designed houses of the future, and you can have a look at all this new technology. It's basically designed for builders to go around and see what's going on, but it is open to the public, so you can actually book and go there and see what you might want to do there. And I know when I was doing some work for them there, you could go in every day and you could see how much energy they were actually producing on their solar panels and on how much energy they were saving on looking at perhaps two similar houses, one well insulated and one not so.
No, fair enough. Yeah, it's one of those things where another house I've recently seen that might be of the same interest and quality is actually a house built by the Low Carbon Trust down in Brighton. it's they've gone, I say gone mad in relation to what they've been trying to do, but they've been building the walls or these dirt mounds out of tires packed with dirt. They've been building basically the walls with out of glass bottles, all sorts of funny
Yeah,
materials.
you can build your house out of rubbish if you really try quite hard.
And essentially this was just to not prove what to do, but it was sort of, you know, the reason they used glass because it had the air pockets. Yeah, it was all, the reasons for it were all clever and designed, and it just looks different because, of course, what is the template for a house? But yeah, so they're offering all sorts of things down in Brighton. For have a look. They're more just on the side of sustainable living, but that's it's not a out of the way thing. It just happens to be because they put all the horror panels, they harvest all their own water and sort of recycle it and all sorts of
Yeah,
lovely
'cause
business.
you can use your water probably about 3 or 4 ways. You bring your water in, you drink it. Having got rid of that water in the sort of the sink and the bath and the shower, then you could take that water and you could use that as grey water to sort of flush the toilet. And you could then use that water to sort of water the garden.
Yeah, so as I say, so one of these other things, of course, is to think about sort of not recycling, it's the wrong way to put it, but think of as the homes of the future is to say, you know, clever ways of using things like using more grey water, like using all these things. Because, of course,
And they're VAT free.
if you install them at the
Yeah.
minute and have a project to install them, let alone a uh, project, a community project to install, to do these things, to set one up to investigate these things. If you're just planning to install a system, say like a grey water system, that's also, now I'm not sure whether that actually would be VAT free because, of course, is only on energy related products.
But a lot of these clever ones, when you shove the water out, your hot water out of the bath, what you can do is you can have a heat exchanger in there
To capture it,
to capture the heat from the bath water and then to reuse that heat to heat basically your hot water. And so that would count.
yes.
So when you're building your waste management system in, most of the ones that I've seen, not just don't just recycle the water, but they're intelligent. They recycle the heat as well.
Yes, yeah. So it's one of those things where if you're clever enough to set it up and you can basically worm it through, then essentially you can get your everything VAT, but only if you're doing it as a resident, not as a commercial unit. But that's just one of those by the by things because of course they have got commercial grants, so they do basically try to sort of separate the two.
Yeah.
So it's not a don't do it for a commercial unit. It's merely move to the commercial route or commercial grant system as opposed to the residential, which is for a everyday person.
So there we are. We've looked at, is now the right time to buy green? I think the answer is if you haven't got a system, yes, now is the time to try and buy because it's going to be VAT free. Do read the small print because, as Paul said, it's only on new systems. It's not on add-ons. And it isn't just about solar panels. It's about all the types of renewable heat sources
Or energy sources.
any renewable energy sources to try and improve your property, which will cut down on your electricity consumption and your gas consumption. It'll help you, and it'll also help sort of, the environment. So worth thinking about. If you haven't done it yet, now probably is the good time to start having a look at what you can do. Thank you for watching the Going Green podcast. We will be back next week with another podcast looking at some more ideas on going green. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And a goodbye from me.
Bye-bye.